he lent me this book, and it just like kind of changed my outlook on like how food could look. Like, wow, that looks stunning.
What I'm fascinated in is when you left Core by Clare Smyth. What's it been like moving to and becoming your own boss and going from a 3-star place to a pub?
When you're doing everything by yourself, your successes are that much greater.
Yeah.
Your failures, yes, are also that much greater. But
opportunities, Ben. There are opportunities, failures,
no
opportunities to learn.
One thing I would say is that I'm really happy that I did go down that route.
Pubs have failed in the past, possibly old wet-led pubs. New blood comes in, chefs very much like yourselves and change things a lot. Have you had much resistance from the locals, or has it been pretty much they've welcomed you?
We are not going to go and like tear down someone's local drinking pub. You're almost setting yourself up to fail.
Those aspects of colour, texture, is that thought out while you're doing the recipes?
Like odd numbers look better on a plate than even numbers. So if I've got like a beetroot, I'll put like 5 pieces. I'll put 7 dots of the sauce on, quite autumnal. So I've got like beetroot, venison, blackberries, hen of the woods mushroom, dark reds, greys, and then put some chard on there for a little bit of green that would colour. Dishes from my own head, opposed to following repertoires and something that someone else had instructed you on how to plate.
Right, that is stunning. This channel is up to 358 subs so far, and I'm working really hard to get it higher. But as with any social media, the more subs, the more credibility, the more guest chefs I can get on the podcast. So I'm going to take a lead from the Stephen Bartlett playlist and ask you for a small favour. If you can subscribe to the channel, I promise to continue making the best podcast I can with the most creative, interesting and talented chefs out there. So if you're enjoying these long-form deep dives into plate design and food aesthetics as much as I am, then please get involved by liking, subscribing and letting me know what you think in the comments. Thanks so much. Welcome to the Food Envy podcast, where we explore the visual side of food. Today I'm with Ben Watson from the Golden Ball in Henley. Hey Ben, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you so much for having me in today.
No, it's a pleasure.
Really good to come in and chat to you about your new place, your style and all that kind of stuff, and check out the plating later. So I guess it's probably quite a broad question, but what was your style of plating kind of determined by the Michelin Stars that you were in? Did you actively seek out to work in those places because you like that style, or is it just you fell into it and that became your style?
It's not a secret that when we like look at food, we are kind of attracted to it. I mean, obviously everyone's again subjective to what they like and what they don't like, but yeah, I think like a lot of the Michelin star restaurants that I saw, I liked that pretty looking stuff in the books. Like when I was up and coming, not up and coming, when I started out chefing, I was working in a pub and I was working with this guy. He was like really passionate and he loved all the sort of like more fine dining places, and he had these couple of books. One of them was Maze by Jason Atherton.
Oh yeah.
And he lent me this book, and it just like kind of changed my outlook on like how food could look. And I remember just flicking through the photography, like the plates were just beautiful, and like, this is so nice. Like I don't know what it was about that. It was just like, I was like, I want to work there. Like, ended up being like a few years later, Jason left Maze, opened Pollen Street Social, but I worked there for a bit with Jason, and then after that Little Social. But his plating style was always like really attractive to me. And I've got like a bookshelf full of books that I just look at. Like I'm never going to cook a recipe out of like Alinea or like it's Noma, but you look at it and you're like, oh wow, that looks beautiful.
That makes me feel so much better that you'll look at it and not do it as well, because I do exactly the same things.
I'll never. I mean, when I was bored at my last job at private chef, I had like a lot of spare time. I think I tried a few recipes from some of those books that like probably should just never be attempted at home.
They're not there to be attempted, are they? They're there to be intimidating.
They're there to look at and be like, wow, that looks stunning. And then you figure out like why you think it looks beautiful, and like my own plating style, it's hard to like pin down like if it's been influenced by anything, because I feel like it looks a bit different from like places I've worked. But it's obviously like where I've worked and where I've eaten out. It's been an amalgamation of all that kind of stuff. And so I don't know, it's hard because it's my first kind of role, I suppose, like plating things up. Because some of the dishes that I do are quite similar, like with the sort of symmetry, neat and tidy. And then like the dish that I wanted to do today is like a bit more, I don't know what the word is, like I think it was Nick, he was talking to, saying a messy plate. Like it's a little bit more like that. Like it's not contrived. It's not like I've not looked at it and thought like that must go there, and getting the ruler out and like making sure it's kind of like I put it down a couple of times and thought like that looks nice. It looks kind of natural, seasonal, a little bit of the colours and stuff like that.
Because from what I've seen when either speaking to chefs or just doing some research for this podcast, is the minority of chefs seem to actually have a plan before they start, as far as I can tell. You know, I've seen some people that will draw it out, little sketches and stuff like that. I think I would be like that. But yourself, Nick, and I think Scott to a degree, it's pretty much just these are my ingredients and I'm just going to have a little play, and the dish very much evolves.
Yeah, it does. I think that's a good way of doing it. I mean, if I ever have a development chef and like a big team behind me, I probably will sit down. I mean, like, you know, I'll be in bed and I've got like a notebook, and I'll just be like lying there and I'm like, oh, I want to do this now. Like I want to. I know this is good at the moment. I know.
So you'll be ingredient led.
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, kind of hesitant to say that's what I'm all about, because like. In terms of like locality is seasonality, but that's very much become a part of what we do here because it's easy. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but when you're the gamekeeper or like the farmer or the fishmonger, whatever, like says like, I've got this, like, can you use it? And you're like, yeah, like, and then you go, okay, I've been really lucky. The garden's small, but I've had loads of stuff out of the garden. Like,
you actually have a garden here, do you?
Yeah, well, it's not a veg garden, but I've got like elderflower bushes, I've got blackberries, got pears, got a little herb garden, and that there's gooseberry bush. So these little things, like, also from a cost point of view, I'm looking at I looked at the bushes, they're full of elderberries, and I was like, okay, I've got like a really cool old book that's like wild foods, sort of like, came out in the 1940s or something like that, and there was a recipe in there for elderberry ketchup. Made it delicious, paired it with some like local muntjac venison, and that's kind of like how it evolves quite a lot of the time. So yeah, it's
I mean, that's quite good, because sometimes the worst thing you can have, either certainly in photography, but I'm sure if you're a painter or a writer, is that blank page. So you've got like a little bit of help and a little bit of encouragement to say, well, start with this and then see what you can do with it.
Some of the dishes just sort of like, come together by themselves naturally, organically. Other times I'll just be like, oh, I really want to use that, and I know that goes with that.
So I get that from sort of generating the recipe. But so when the dish you're doing today, for example, will you have no idea when that, I assume it's going to be a whitish plate, is put down, what you're going to do? Or do you have a rough idea that, you'll put this slightly off center and then you'll use a sauce for some color? Or I know those aspects of color, texture, things. Is that thought out while you're doing the recipe, or literally will be?
I think a bit of both. So I've got like white, greyish sort of white plates. All the most of the colours in this particular dish are quite autumnal. So I've got like beetroot, venison, blackberries, hen of the woods mushrooms. So it's kind of like dark reds, greys, and then put some chard on there for a little bit of green, a little bit of colour. Then obviously the sort of, the meat, the cuisson, that you can see like how it's been cooked. And then we do some table pouring sauces here, but it depends on kind of what the dish is. We do a couple, but at the moment with the meat dish, just like I'll sauce it and I guess kind of old school way, like a little bit, and sort of like swirl it around so it fills up a little bit more of the plate. So I'm conscious of like space and color and height and texture and stuff. But if I'm not quite like that sort of person where I could write that down. I wouldn't be like, okay, beetroot's going to go there, because almost like I don't know why it looks nice, but I kind of can just
in your mind, you understand composition in your mind.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, there's the one thing that I always think, I'm sure someone told me this once, is like odd numbers look better on a plate than even numbers. So if I've got like a beetroot, I'll put like 5 pieces, I'll put 7 dots of the sauce on, or 2 or 3 of that. Like, so there's something about the kind of odd versus even on a plate, that especially in that kind of design where it's on there looking a little bit messy, rather than like perfectly symmetrical, which has like its beauty as well. But I don't know, there's something just like about the setting that we're in. I feel like what I'm doing at the moment is makes a bit more sense. I think that should come into it when you're thinking about what the style of plating you're doing. Like.
I think you're right, absolutely, in terms of the sort of the environment that you're in, if you were super mechanical and super precise, it probably wouldn't be in keeping with where you are. That actually makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's like got to be like ever so slightly rustic, like, you know, nice, generous kind of like portion.
Yeah.
And everything kind of together, but so when you eat it, it's not, you know, like, 'cause a lot of places that have like 1, 2, 3 things that say they're separate and it looks very beautiful, and then you're kind of doing that kind of thing. I feel like my style's kind of moving towards the thing where you could take a bite out of any part of it and it should be the kind of the mouthful you're getting.
Yep.
Because, you know, there's if you've got all that stuff on the plate, it should be for a reason.
Yep.
So you should be eating all those bits for a reason. So like, the muntjac with the elderberry sauce, like that goes together with the mushroom, with the beetroot. You should have it all together with the sauce, and it'll be like, oh, that's really nice. Rather than sort of, because one of each elements might not be that like great.
I'm with you.
Together, it's like it's a different experience. So try and make that part of the plating as well, I suppose.
It's technical, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. When you think it's hard when you think about it, because I feel like I don't think about it that much.
Yeah.
I just kind of like we were saying earlier, start off with the ingredients and then kind of just you know, just start, see how it feels, and maybe I won't be happy with it for the first couple of attempts.
It's incredible, isn't it? Just when you talk to people who are, you know, been doing something for a while, and because I'm a home cook, right? And I think I know a fair amount, but was it called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you don't know what you don't know? And what you just said then about, you know, eating, so each thing works independently by itself and stuff. I don't even know this, right? It's just fascinating to get that level of detail, because you've been doing it for 15 years, something like that.
15 years,
yeah. It's incredible. It's incredible. So how do you think sort of plate design has evolved over the years? Because I was just in the time that, you know, you've been chefing, and I've certainly been doing food photography, I remember seeing cookbooks from 20 years ago, and it was like an afterthought. Now it's super important. What sort of trends do you see? Do you see stuff that has just gone out of fashion now, and sort of what's coming in more? Do you have any ideas what people are doing?
I mean, like, I can say, like, when I started chefing, things that were still quite, I mean, this is in the places that I was working. I wasn't working in like 3-star restaurants when I started. It was pubs and stuff. So lots of balsamic drizzles, glazes with and like coulis on the desserts, zigzags on square plates. Square plates were massive, like oblong kind of plates. That was really like in swipes of purees. That seems to still get it every now and again. And I think it still can look really nice. In the right kind of place. But the random swipes or like smears and stuff like that. That's less, I would say, from what I can see.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it seems to be fine dining places, a little bit more tight, a little bit more neat, not too many kind of gratuitous like herbs and stuff like that. I feel like that used to be also micro herbs on everything that were irrelevant. Again, I think used in the correct way, they're great, because some of them pack a lot of flavour. And they do look, you can't really argue, it does look quite pretty sometimes if you have like little baby herbs and stuff like that. But it's got to be like relevant.
Well, absolutely. Because I was looking at some of the stuff from Core, and just the level of detail in images like this. I mean, it just looks too good to eat, sort of thing. Would you have worked on some of these? Do you recognise any of these?
Yeah. So the first one that we saw, so that that's how the canapes presented. So they used to come out. So that's a chicken of a sort of parfait little tart. And it used to come out on this sort of like representation of like the woodland almost. And then we'd have the smoked eel jelly tarts, and they'd come out on this like, it looked like sort of like the ocean floor. A lot of thought was put into how the food looked. Like,
so in that restaurant, sorry to interrupt you, would that be done by a development? They would be a team of people working on this, sort of driven by Clare.
So we had one development chef who would work together with Clare and Johnny, the head chef, and they would come up, I think, with presentations. I mean, this one we did from pretty much day one. I mean, So that's like someone went out and got like logs and leaves and stuff from the woods and created these kind of. But me and Priya ate there quite recently, and it does, when you sit down and all these things get put on your table, it's like this kind of sensory experience. It's like it is something quite amazing about it, and it's different. It's cool. It's but you can see a lot of restaurants of that caliber doing that kind of thing. They don't just put down things on a plate necessarily anymore. It's like a lot more kind of like theatre
and story and
exactly, and like and always try and keep it relevant to what you're serving. If that makes sense. So it's if you're doing something that's like woody flavours, then you serve it on the woods, or sea flavours for the sea, not just like randomly serving it on like a bed of grass that's nothing to do with it.
How long, say, would a dish? I mean, this one that kind of blew my mind when you see it cut in and stuff. I mean, just the technical ability, but then also, just visually how stunning that is. How long would a dish like this take to come about from, I guess, when they're deciding we're doing a new menu to actually it coming on board? I mean,
I never really knew like how the development process like worked, but I wouldn't, maybe a month or something like that.
Do they change the menus that frequently?
Yeah, I mean, like, so the tart, when I was, again, it's probably changed since I was there, but like when I was there, we'd seasonally change this tart. Okay. So there was like other iterations of the same.
I see.
Of the same thing. Before that, it was actually like a slice. There was an asparagus one, and it was like almost, like a classic like lemon tart. Yeah. And then you'd get like a perfect like wedge of it instead of those. And then we started doing these individual sort of like, that's a Girol buckwheat one. So it's there's like a farce underneath, like a mixture, like mushroom mixture. And then there's what's called like a royale. So it's like a set mushroom kind of cream that would go on that. And then I think underneath there was a confit egg yolk, roasted Girols, and then just loads of like herbs, like chives, thyme flowers, slices of raw Girol mushroom. Okay. I think that went with a roasted mushroom velouté or something like that. That was part of the tasting menu. Yeah, so that's the smoked teal.
So,
tart, and that's also the presentation thing that we used to do.
Isn't it?
On the bottom. So there was a lot of that, I think, how you serve things. And I've done a couple of things here, but it's time, unfortunately. It's a lot of time. So like I've done a few dishes where I've served something on the side and tried to like, mirror a little bit of that. So I did one venison dish where on the side I did like a little kind of kebab almost, like a kofta. And then I was seasoning it with sort of like pine salt. So we served it on a bed of like pine leaves and stuff. I think it's just to aid, like a visual aid. So like when you're eating something that you can see, oh, that's from the sea. Like if you serve that on a white plate, it'd still be pretty, but you'd be like, you maybe wouldn't automatically think, oh, I'm taking something out of the seabed or something like that. So,
but I guess there's, what did you say, 30 chefs potentially working on this, and when you're doing it yourself, you can only do so much, right?
There's a big brigade.
Yeah, I mean this was a particularly beautiful looking dish. Again, it's just the thought process that must just go into the colouring, the layout. It's a feat of engineering, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's stunning. I mean, that's I remember plating that one up. We used to put like a ring there, so you could get that kind of like perfect line, and just have to sort of like do one by one. So I just again, there'd be a couple of people like in charge. That's not what they were all, just what they were doing, but they'd be in charge doing that. So that was on our seasonal tasting menu, and I remember sort of like, you'd be like, okay, check on like 4 seasonal menus, 5 seasonal menus, and you'd be like, oh my god, like dotting these things up. Yeah,
because just the precision of something like that is just ridiculous, I'd imagine. And would it be this if one of those, what do you call the little dobs of puree, or if one of those was not right, it wouldn't go out?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I remember, if your bottle of puree is running out and you squeeze it and it goes up. I mean, that's heartbreaking. Like when you're right at the end of something like that. But you would know. You would just be like, okay, I'm just going to do another one. Yeah. You wouldn't try and like put it on the pass, because then it wouldn't.
It's coming back.
Yeah, you'd be like, what are you doing? So I think you had to be at some level of like trust to do the dots, as far as I remember.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I can imagine the steadiness of hand just itself must just be incredible. Especially when you're doing it under pressure.
Yeah.
With everything else that's going on, I can only imagine. So things like this, clearly, I mean, this is a stretch to be doing as a one-man band.
Yeah.
You would take influences of this kind of playing, because I guess that's what you've been doing for so long.
I mean, like, you know, especially with core, it was all like about Britishness, and, like, you know, big focus on like, you know, good British ingredients and like letting them shine. And it wasn't, you know, despite what it looks like, it wasn't like overly complicated stuff. It was, you know, at the element, it was just sort of like really tasty things.
Yep.
Obviously elevated to that sort of 3 Michelin star level. But so I think I'm like fundamentally kind of the same, but like what I'm doing, but just not that.
Yeah.
You know, if I had a bigger team, I could do more things. That's not an excuse. I like what I'm doing now. Probably wouldn't do. I wouldn't do anything like that because it's not.
Yeah.
It's probably not in my DNA to create dishes that are so like that.
Yeah.
But I definitely like what I took from that. It's that kind of.
It's probably got in, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Whether you're aware of it or not, I imagine because we all get infused by our references, whether you specifically know it or not. And when you've done 100-hour weeks and you know all that kind of stuff, it's just going to have gone in through osmosis, isn't it? Nothing else.
100%. And like I think if you said to me like, could you plate that in the style of core, I could probably do something that's like not a million miles away because like I think I've got a pretty good idea of like the food that they do, like how it looks.
Yeah.
Because it is like fairly like unique, and I know it's just that kind of beautiful kind of like a lot of it's like symmetry and you know that kind of thing, but also kind of natural. It's, you know, so I think I probably could do a decent kind of reflection of that, but obviously I don't want to do anything that's going to be like people being like, oh yeah, I've been to core and your food looks like the same. Like, you know,
you want it to be you, don't
want that at all.
No.
Yeah, you got to take your little bits of everywhere you've worked, and then hopefully you're like something else that's not existed before because you're like
absolutely
a mixture of everything else.
We are standing on the shoulders of giants, aren't we? You know,
exactly.
So what would have been your favourite dish to plate then? Just at all, really. I guess a dish like the ones we just looked at. As a layperson, I can't see much joy in that because I'd be terrified of it. So, is there a dish that you look back and you think, not only was it fun to play, but it was just a stunning looking?
I think it's probably a bit of like a cliche of core, but like, I think they had potato, like so it was just like kind of signature dish, which is literally like a little Charlotte potato that's been cooked in seaweed. It was sort of like a nod to Irish heritage. Potato that had been cooked in seaweed, covered with some smoked trout and smoked herring roe, some little salt and vinegar crisps, basically like some tiny little salt and vinegar crisps, lots of different sorrels, like flowers, like for sort of like that lemony sort of freshness, like, and just served with a seaweed beurre blanc. So simple, so elegant, and honestly like so delicious.
Really?
And a bit of it was always a surprise when someone was like, oh, like a potato, and then they eat it and they're like, oh my god, that's like the best potato I've ever eaten. And the sauce was amazing. Like I'm a big fan of like sauces, so like that was like one of the nicest like sauces I've ever eaten, and I quite like that kind of understated but super elegant, like beautiful, like.
Well, and just the way you described it, it does sound like something's going to flip your expectation, because when you just say it's a potato,
I think that says that
sounds to the layperson like what?
I think that's what might be wrong. What would say on the menus it's like core potato or something like that, and but every time you put that down and you sort of talk to the guests about it, you just be like, it's amazing. It's just, I just like that as well, like a potato in a 3-star restaurant.
I mean that again I've talked to other chefs about it. It's confidence, isn't it? I mean, you've got to be super confident to be serving a potato, even as part of a tasting menu. Have you? I mean, that's pretty ballsy, isn't it?
Obviously, Claire's super confident. And she's about and her style and stuff. So you could see that in the food. It was kind of, it was what it was, if you know what I mean. Like a lot of it wasn't a million different elements. It's quite simple's the wrong word, but it's not. It's like, simple isn't easy.
No.
It's like...
no, absolutely.
It wasn't simple, but it was refined, but not a million things on the plate, like I say. Just what needed to be there was there. And that's, I think, when you're taking over your own place, you need to try and get some of that. Because I couldn't tell you how many times I've heard, like, older chefs be like, oh, when I was a younger chef, like, I wanted to put, like, a million things on the plate. And as I've got older, I've put less and less things on the plate. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy that says that. Like, I want to start off being like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I probably could put a couple of other bits on there, but that is enough. There's 5 things on that plate. That's enough. If I can't give you what I want in those 5 ingredients, and something's not right. So I'm trying my hardest to do that. Again, the fact that it's just me has really helped with that. Like, because I'm not tempted to be like, oh, you do me this, do me that. I want to fit this, because maybe sometimes my brain's like, oh, that needs something else. Yeah. And then I'm like, but does it? Like,
yeah. So it's reining you in slightly.
Yeah, I think it is, which is it's been quite helpful actually.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Hopefully that's people don't get that. I'm like, oh my god, there's like a billion things here. Like, or like when they're trying to show off like all your different techniques and stuff. No, I'm trying to keep it a bit more simple and just deliver on the flavour and the kind of simplicity of it.
Sounds very sensible to me.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got, when it is your own business and you're balancing everything else that's going on in the restaurant. It's not just your responsibility in there, is it? It's every aspect of it,
No, exactly.
Taking on too much when you don't need to necessarily, and you can sing, just on the more simple dishes. Sounds very sensible.
Yeah, I think so. And like, some people get like intimidated when they see something that they don't like. Not recognise, but like, if they think like, oh my god, I don't know if I should eat that. Or like, if it's,
which part do I eat?
Yeah, like, we'll see what's going to happen. It's like, it's just trying to like, trying to hit that sweet spot of like, I want people to go like, oh wow, that looks lovely. And, oh god, that tastes amazing.
Yeah. Well, I know as a punter, when you go into somewhere and you were just surprised by this beautiful creation that's put down in front of you, it's kind of the best, clearly not the best bit because you're there to eat it, but it's that sense of wonder. That's probably what I was trying to say. That sense of wonder is part of the theatre and the magic of when we're talking about the experience of coming out to somewhere. I can't do that at home.
Yeah, you have to do that, don't you? I think because that's exactly it. Hit the nail on the head. It's like we as people that are producing food outside of home, it's like people need to be like, well, I can do that at home because automatically, people are funny. Like they quite often. I've not actually had it here, but we'll have conversations like outside of work where they say like, oh, how can you charge like that for that? Because it doesn't cost that. Like I could make that at home for like £5.
Yeah.
And then you have to go like, well, that's not how it works. Sorry. Like we have to pay for everything else as well. Obviously, like when you're in your house, like you don't have to worry about the staff and the energy bills and all that sort of stuff and the labour and the 15 years of my life that I've dedicated to learning my craft. Like that's what you're paying for. Same like obviously with what you do.
Exactly.
It's like I can take a picture. It's like, well, no, that's not the point.
That person's not your customer. So you've been at the Golden Ball for about a year. What I'm fascinated is when you left Core by Clare Smyth a year ago. What's it been like moving to and becoming your own boss and going from a 3-star place to a pub? How's that been for you?
It's been a really interesting change. I probably should say that I took in between Core and here, I actually did a little stint as a private chef as well. That also was an extremely like different experience to anything like to do with a restaurant or a pub and stuff. But I'd say that kind of helped me in a little way because I was doing everything myself there as well as what I'm doing.
Oh, okay.
So,
so a little bit of a baby step.
It was a little bit. Yeah, no, it was because it wasn't like going from working with a brigade of 20 plus chefs to them being sort of me in like a pot wash like overnight. It wasn't quite as sort of dramatic as that. So I had that kind of stepping stone in the middle, but it's obviously so far removed from like restaurant service. It's you can't really compare it. But at least there I was sort of planning menus. I was like, plating up dishes for them that was for the first time dishes from my own head. As far as opposed to following repertoires and something that someone else had, instructed you on how to plate. So, that really helped me because that is an enormous difference, obviously, from being part of a larger sort of machine to being on your own where everything is on your head and, every decision that you make affects you. And like in my case, obviously, like my family, like because we all live here and my wife's, runs the front of house.
And was that a challenge you really wanted?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think I got to the point in life where I thought, I'm going to be a dad.
Sobering, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You feel sort of, I don't know, I had this really strange sort of like moment where I thought, I don't really want to have someone sort of like not bossing you around, but someone above you that's kind of putting pressure on you to do things that maybe you don't want to do, or you sort of not that fulfilled by doing.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a good point to be like, you know, I'm going to be a dad. Like, how about we do this? Something that me and my wife always wanted to do was run our own place.
Yep.
Just felt like the time was right. So I guess it's like having a child. There's no right or wrong time.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But you know, you'll know when it's the right time.
But I think having the strength to know what you want and then actually go out and to achieve it is really powerful, because you know, not everyone does it. You know, in my own experience, I was in corporate for 15 years before doing this, and you could tell people that were very comfortable in that environment, as in getting their safe paycheck every day, and you know, pension and all that kind of stuff, and that's brilliant.
Yeah.
But for me, I was kind of wanted to do a little bit more and have that control over my own life and my own destiny, and hopefully my own successes and failures.
Yeah.
You know, rather than have it coming from above. So, no, I absolutely get that.
I think you need people like that as well, don't you? At the end of the day, I mean,
yes, you do.
Not everyone can be like, okay, I want to go and run my own place, I want to run my own business, because then that would be chaos. But I was the same as you in that aspect. I wasn't really comfortable, like just staying that, as you say, like comfortable paycheck.
Yeah.
The money would have been better.
Yeah.
You know, much less stress, much less pressure. Oh, what am I doing? You know, but at the end of the day, when you're doing everything by yourself, your successes are that much greater.
Yeah.
Your failures, yes, are also that much greater. But
opportunities, Ben. There are opportunities. Opportunities to learn.
Yeah, no, it's been one big interesting opportunity this first year. So,
And what would you say the biggest thing that you've learned is from going from 3-star to this and being jack of all trades, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is that I'm really happy that I did go down that route, because I think that, like, you know, it's a lot of people I've seen that they come out of that environment and they kind of speak negatively of like how it is, and like I wouldn't lie to anyone and say it's like it's you know, it's hard. Like there are going to be times where you're probably going to think about like, what am I doing? Like this is super hard. This isn't what I kind of necessarily signed up for. I don't know, but stick with it and it will pay dividends in the end, because the skill set and the tools that you have from spending years in those environments, no matter what you want to do, whether it's like flip burgers or, you know, fish and chips, you're going to do that like in the best way possible, or like with us, what we're doing here, I suppose you call it like modern British. I know that's a bit of a umbrella term I don't really like, but you know, that's probably what we'd get described as. You know, the food that we're doing is much more simple than it was at core Restaurant Gordon Ramsay, but the elements and the sort of fundamentals are all there. It's all about using the best ingredients. Don't manipulate them too much. Let the flavors sort of speak for themselves. And you can't really go too wrong with that. You know, obviously you need a little bit of like personal flair and expression, because you don't want to be like a carbon copy of somewhere you've worked. But I would say that like my biggest takeaway from that is like, I'm so glad that I did that, because whether or not you enjoy it for the entire time, you got to put in the groundwork. And then when you're here and you're like designing menus or you're thinking about how you're going to put something together, it's a lot easier, because you're like, you've seen a lot, you've learned a lot, and you've put in the work. It's not like you've been cooking for a year and you think, I'm going to I'm going to go run my own business now because I've read this and that in the book. Like, people do that and people make success of that, you know, but for me, it was about building up the sort of like a library almost, you know.
It's such a solid foundation as well, isn't it? Really? Yeah. And the fact that you've got both pillars as well with your wife, front of house, loads of experience, you in the kitchen, loads of experience. I mean, you're ahead of the game already, aren't you? Really?
Yeah.
I would think of anybody looking to start a new business in the food sector, especially at the moment where it's already hard enough, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Essential, I would say, at the moment. If you're like husband and wife team, if one of you can watch what's going on in the front, one of you watch what's going on in the back, and literally be everywhere. You know, because obviously together we have the same vision. Then whenever something goes right or wrong, we know that at least that we're pushing for the same goal, and there's no one else to blame. So I would say that's kind of essential at the moment. But especially if you're like us and you're running somewhere with like less staff and, you know, a small team, it kind of it makes sense for us.
Yeah. So going back to, because you mentioned something I was going to pick up on a second ago, is you talked about the vision and the goal for this place. So what is the vision and goal for this place? What do you want to either get it to? Do you want to achieve certain accolades or anything like that? Or is it, again, be happy, successful business?
Yeah, I've always, like, personally, even though I've worked in like Michelin star restaurants for a long time, it wasn't like the be all and end all for me here. I want to have like a busy, successful restaurant, like more than anything else, where we do food that I'm happy serving. People are happy eating. It's probably like the main thing. A healthy business, like, because you can have a Michelin star and
no one comes in
dead. And what's the point? I mean, at the end of the day, like, we're running a business, which is, it's not all about making money at all, because there are easier ways to make money. It's about building something that makes sense, that we can hopefully get something out of ourselves as well. You know, like, if we can make enough money to like buy a house or something out of it, or you know, send Lily to a good school, or, you know, these sort of things, like that's important for me. I do have, like, you know, I'm not going to change my fundamental view on like food and cooking and stuff as well. So I do want to create a restaurant where people go like, oh, that's like really good food, and that's, you know, hopefully can say like, oh, that's some of the best food in that area. And, you know, when we do get in any kind of guides, or we get any mentions, like we managed to get in the Michelin guides, like last month, which was kind of like a quiet goal for me. I was like, I just want to get in the guide in the first year, because then what it is more than anything else for me at the moment is free advertising tool. And so it went live on their sort of website a couple of weeks ago. We've already had people coming in and being like, oh, if you just go on the Michelin app and you search Henley on Thames, like, this is the first place that comes up. And it's like, that's great. Like,
how does that work? They literally just come in.
So
is it like the stars?
You contact them, I think, or I didn't have to, but I wanted to. After about 6 months, I just sent them an email saying like, just so you know, I've taken over this, like, you know, this place. I can't remember if they ask you for like a copy of your CV or like a menu, or maybe just a link to your website, and they'll say, okay, we'll endeavor to like send someone along in the next year or so. And then, so the first step's obviously you're in the guide. And then they do their sort of like tiers of like bib gourmand, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, that sort of thing. So I don't expect to get anything like that.
But just to be in
the guide, I think that was it's a nice thing. It kind of just, not like it sets you apart, but it just puts you in like a slightly different lane, I would say. So people, hopefully when they see that, I mean, the expectation is raised, don't get me wrong. Like, there'll be people that will probably come in and be like, this is fitting. And they have this, a lot of people have an automatic assumption of like, oh, you're in the Michelin guide, that means you're going to have like tablecloths and like, you know, waiters and in suits and all this, that and the other. And it's not really the case anymore, but I'm still proud of it. I mean, it's still a good achievement, I think, for us to have done that. So.
Well, definitely, and it's the first rung on the ladder, as you said. You know, and if it's not the reason for doing, it's just a nice to have. Yeah,
it's not, you know, been in places where that's literally like the be all and end all, and that is because obviously with stars come business. Like, it's not just an ego trip. It's like it's a business kind of thing as well, which is good for you, because again, it's free and it puts you on a map that people kind of still respect. I think certain people. So, you know, it does make sense, but I didn't want us to be like, okay, like, I'm never going to say we need to put that on the menu, because that's going to like get us a Michelin star, or we need to do like just that format of menu. We can only do
to game the system almost.
You kind of can. Like, I mean, if I said we're only going to do 10 covers a night and it's going to be one menu, and I'm not saying that's like easier or more difficult than what I'm doing. It's just that would be a way of almost assuring that everything that goes out is like super consistent, super like similar. I mean, like, because plenty of restaurants now do one sitting, one menu. That's like something that's come about I guess it's always been around, but it seems to be like slightly more popular now, because I think it's, you know, it's a way of like creating consistency without stressing over like 20 different things on your menu.
Sounds quite sensible.
Yeah, it is sensible. It is.
That's very sensible.
If you have the clientele around you that will support that kind of business, I feel that here it's not the right place.
Okay.
So I probably wouldn't.
Would that be more like a London, like a big? Because I mean, Henley's clearly an affluent area, but it's just not enough volume of people.
Probably not enough people.
Okay.
In London, there happens a lot, you know, like chef's tables, experiences, like chef's counters, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That probably just makes more sense as a bigger pool of people to sort of that like doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I'm relying on quite a lot of repeat business as well, especially for our, like, you know, our lunchtime offer, where I try and change it a lot because people come back a lot. So it's kind of got to be this constant kind of changing of stuff. But that keeps it exciting for me and for the people that come. Some people come every week.
Yes.
You know, they come every week because something always changes. So.
And let's face it, because it is just you, it's got to be exciting for you, doesn't it, really? Otherwise, go back to somebody else's kitchen, I guess.
Yeah. Like, leave all the stress and that shit behind.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I was also going to ask you, because I did a very recent video on my channel about the British pub and how it's changed and how it's moved more from wet-led to food and things like that. And in the research of that, it was also interesting to find out how when, you know, pubs have failed in the past, possibly old wet-led pubs, new blood comes in, chefs very much like yourselves, and change things a lot. Have you had much resistance from the locals, or has it been pretty much they've welcomed you because you've still included them in your plans?
We were very careful on where we chose. So when we were looking at pubs, we made that exactly point that you were making. We are not going to go and like tear down someone's like local like drinking pub and turn it into like a gastro pub or a fine dining
tasting menu place.
Exactly, like, because you're almost setting yourself up to fail. I mean, it does work. Maybe it can work if it fits fantastic, but if you don't have the like, at least the blessing of the locals, it can be really difficult. Here, so the person that was running it before here was running it in a similar kind of restaurant-y style, not quite the same, but you know, we weren't sort of upsetting anything or anyone or like interrupting. You know, like a quiz night and a you know, little sort of snug bar and sort of, you know, a pool table, darts board. It was never that kind of place. Well, sorry, it was probably 15 years ago, but it's not been like that recently. So I felt like that was very important because people are very protective over their local pub.
As they should be.
As they definitely should be. They should support it by going there to drink more, I would say, because the only way that pubs can stay open that are wet-led is by people that obviously drink in there, and it can't be you go there once a year and then get upset that it's closed. They need obviously like full-time support. That's why it's so difficult to not serve food in a pub that way. It's not like a conscious decision of everyone to suddenly turn around and be like, oh, we hate pubs, like we're going to turn them all into restaurants. It's more of like the only way this business can work is like if you have a good food offering, because people just don't drink enough. you know, really, like,
not often you hear that, is it? Just not drinking enough in this country.
I mean, and then can't blame people when you go out for a pint and it's like minimum £6 or whatever it is these days, and then you've got your like, oh, you can get like 20 cans of lager for the same. I mean, that's the whole thing that probably should be changed. But you know, people in the industry, I think, have tried to sort of address that issue of like having a minimum you know, how much you can charge for alcohol in like the shops, because that's been also a thing that's like killing the pub trade, because if you can buy beer for a tenth of the price and drink it at home, I mean, I think that it's a new part of the culture, isn't it? I mean, if you speak to, you know, older generation like my dad or whatever, and say like, well, no one used to drink at home really. Like no one used to sit on the sofa getting like hammered on a Saturday night. Like we'd go down the pub because probably the beer was sort of like relatively the same price as what it was in the shops, or you just couldn't buy it in the shops or whatever. Like, you know, we've been given this whole new thing where it's like, okay, do you want to spend like a tiny bit of money or do you want to spend like a lot of money? And, and the whole social experience of going to the pub is that's why people went. That was a place where they'd meet up and chat and stuff. And obviously that's kind of just changing, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess COVID kind of expedited that somewhat. Because people realised that, you could all, for the last few years, you could have got cheap booze pre-COVID, but I guess it gave people the reason to do it more, I guess, and then it's hard to get people out of habits, isn't it, really? And that's where pubs need to create more of an experience, either through food or other events or something along those lines, just to try and create that social nature to it, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's important. I mean, I think there's another law. I don't know when it came in. I won't say anything that's. I don't know when it was, but it was something about change of usage, like for pubs. I think until fairly recently, like it was quite easy for like pubs not making any money. We'll sell it off as a house. So they're all very, very like prime location buildings worth a lot of money. So a lot of people were sort of buying pubs, running them into the ground, selling them as houses. I think that's very difficult now. It's really probably quite a good thing. So, you know, whether it's breweries or private owners, they're trying their hardest to like make pubs like, you know, good again. You know what I mean? Or like make pubs busy again. But, you know, if the whole culture's changed, it is hard because I think, you know, that drinking, meeting up down the pub for, you know, meeting up with your mates and stuff is different now, isn't it? Because we're also like connected online. You know, not going like too deep and all this sort of stuff. Like, you know, like sort of things like social media and all that sort of stuff is, you know, that's got sort of tendrils go everywhere. It's sort of like, you know, people don't seek that kind of, we need to meet up with people and connect with each other over a drink. Or down the pub like maybe it used to be. At least even when I'm only in like early 30s, but even when I was, you know, I'll say 18, like when I was younger,
18-ish.
You know, it was like going down the pub and like playing darts and pool and stuff, and like having a couple of drinks, and that was it. We didn't used to like call each other up or like message each other on the phone because we just didn't have that.
No, that's right.
So you know, not sell like an old like back in my day, but like, I think that's probably had a bit of a detrimental effect on pubs.
Well, I'm slightly older than you, and I absolutely remember that. You know, it was literally, you know, sticky floorboards, you know, smoky environment, you know, smoking indoors, all this kind of stuff was just mind blowing to what it is now. But this, I would argue, that's much better now. To be honest with you, it's a much nicer place for families, women to come into. It's opened it up to more people, but you're always going to get your traditionalists who liked it the way it was. In the video I did, the metaphor I used was like the difference between vinyl records and digital. You know, you've got that people that swear that vinyl is better than digital because they love the pop and the hiss of the record, they love the ceremony, they love all of that. And yes, it might technically sound better, but again, it's subjective. I like, and I'm a huge music fan, but I'm very much into the more modern. I like having everything on my phone at a glance. It might not be the same quality. You might listen to it slightly differently. But I like that. And I think pubs or modern pubs are similar, where you've got to do more with your space. You've got to make it more community. I think certainly moving on more now.
Yeah, for sure.
And food is such an essential part of that, because everyone's a foodie now, aren't they? I hate this term, but everybody is more into food than they would have been 10, 20 years ago, you know?
You're absolutely right. And I think going back to, you said like post-COVID, you know, a lot of places closed down because I think people got a little bit more picky maybe about where they were going. So, and not in a horrible way, but like maybe that wasn't such a bad thing, that like places that were kind of limping on doing really kind of like average stuff for expensive prices
got found out.
For some reason that was like okay before, and I don't think it should be okay. I think, you know, I think we should all, as like people that run pubs and restaurants, whatever, try and endeavour to, whatever we're doing, like make it the best quality we can, not just be happy with you know, cooking frozen rubbish and like you know, banging things in the microwave. Like, you know, I'm not a food snob, I eat that sort of stuff at home, but like if you're going out and you're charging money, like doesn't matter what you're doing, if it's a toasted sandwich or a pizza or whatever, if you like put a bit of love and effort and passion into it, like then you can charge a bit more, and like justifiably so. But I think those, you know, sometimes you go into places and it's awful and you're paying quite a lot of money and you're like,
because even bad food's expensive now, isn't it?
Exactly. So, and you're like, that's not fair. So you know, I suppose that's kind of, you know, one thing that we're doing here is just sort of making sure that you know, what we're doing is like the best we can do with our limited, you know, we are limited by like how many people we have, but you know, at least can still, I don't feel like that's an excuse for when someone goes, oh well, like I'm on my own, I can only do bagged stuff in and out of a microwave, and it's like, and then you fail
Yeah.
and expect, you know, like you feel like that's unfair. It's like, no, you need to like, we all need to make a little bit more effort now because people are being a little bit more careful with their money and like.
People aren't idiots, are they? I think people are experienced and educated enough now about food that if they're interested in going out to a place like this or whatever, then they're going to know when they're being sort of hoodwinked.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's not a bad thing.
No, a bit of education is never a bad thing. I think because then that sets you apart when you do make those efforts. And, you know, and they'll see it and hopefully appreciate it. Can you just give me a rundown of the dish that you're going to do today for me?
Yeah, sure. It's a barbecued loin of local muntjac deer with some salt-baked beetroot, elderberry ketchup, a little bit of Swiss chard, and some grilled hen of the woods mushrooms.
Okay.
A little venison sauce, and we'll put some pickled blackberries on there as well.
Okay.
Which is all element of fruitiness.
And is this a current dish? This is a current dish. So this is one that you have worked the plating out on already. We're not going to be seeing the evolution in process.
No. So I mean, what I would say is that every plate is slightly different.
Okay.
I've got a general template, but I don't mess around with beetroots are all different sizes. I cut them, but I don't get my ruler out and cut them into perfect squares. The chards or kale or whatever it might be that I'm using is different. The mushrooms always look a bit different.
Yep.
The venison, some pieces are big, fat, some are long and thin.
Yep.
So I've got a rough kind of like outline of what it looks like, but this particular dish, I kind of let the ingredients stay natural, natural kind of shapes and stuff. I think it looks quite nice. I mean, sometimes it reminds me of like, you know, not to like wax too lyrical about it, but like a walk through the woods in autumn or something like that, and you get these kind of natural kind of shapes and like leaves on the floor and the colours and that sort of stuff. So that's how I see it anyway. So try and keep it like nice and natural.
All right, brilliant. Well, look forward to seeing it.
That's kind of like as a base, I'll do that pretty much the same. Again, like I was saying, the beetroot's quite often slightly different shapes and sizes, but I use that as a kind of a base base that I'll build around.
This is looking like a pretty hearty dish already. I mean,
you're
not mucking around, are you?
No, not at all. I do like to be pretty generous with our main courses on our a la carte menu.
Yeah. So this was just inspired by local.
Yeah. So this is literally inspired by sort of where we are, what's available at the moment. You know, what's good from the local suppliers. Kind of letting. Sounds a bit corny, doesn't it? Letting nature sort of dictate.
Not at all.
Letting nature sort of dictate what you put on the plate. But it makes sense in like an area like this, I believe. But
definitely,
because you know, but where I was before, where I've been before, like areas and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much. But
yeah.
So that's essentially it.
It's beautiful. The colours are really, really nice.
Yeah, it's quite autumnal, like I was saying. It's quite dark. And obviously the little flashes of green in there just to sort of give a little bit of colour, because I know if it's all black and grey...
It definitely needs the green, doesn't it, I think?
Yeah,
it helps elevate it.
It can be quite depressing almost. But I think, like, you know, if you look at the food that I do, like I've been doing spring, summer, I've used a lot of sort of flowers from the garden, like borage flowers and like bright blues, stuff like that. A lot of herbs like bright greens and blues and stuff that kind of make sense in the summer and winter. But I think sitting down with that, like a glass of red wine in the sort of like candlelight in a sort of like winter's evening, it's kind of again that kind of like makes sense to me. So.
Absolutely, and because it looks like a very hearty plate of food.
Yeah,
you know, which is it's not what I was expecting, I have to say.
Yeah.
You know, so it's lovely to see that as well. You know, because that's a proper plate of food.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I feel like for what we charge, you know, and for what people kind of want is to be a little bit more like less dainty. I mean, but then again, some of the dishes that I do, you probably look at it and be like, oh, that is a little bit more like dainty. So I don't know.
So you got the mix.
Yeah, exactly. Got a bit of a mix.
All right, great. Yeah, if you want to sauce that, that'd be great.
Well, so normally just a little bit over everywhere.
Fantastic. Right, that is stunning.